My name's Tom Farley, and welcome to our video training on difficult conversations during difficult times. Appreciate your taking the time to attend today. And as we're all coping with a difficult time of COVID-19, this time together is part of a continuing effort by Employee and Family Resources to support with skills and ideas and things that you can do for self-care and things that we can all do to manage conversations and manage relationships, focus on wellness and self-care so that we can all get through this being as healthy and as safe as we possibly can. So we have a lot of people on today's broadcast. I want to let you know that we won't be taking questions during my presentation, but I'll make some comments. And then at the end of my comments, there's a raise your hand function on the GoToMeeting. And if you raise your hand, then we'll be taking questions at the conclusion. And please do feel free to ask questions at that time. So we'll focus on answering your questions at the conclusion. So again, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and move through some slides to kind of get us started. Our objectives, it's always good to know what your intention is and what you are wanting to accomplish. So today, we're really hoping to create an awareness and sort of a reflection on our shared experience about what happens when we have a difficult conversation. What happens when things start to go south and sometimes it feels like things spiral out of control. So there are emotional reasons that things can go wrong. There's, it seems like issues of communication when things start to break down. It's about biology. It's about a physical reaction to stress. So if you think of managing difficult conversations, it's really about managing my own stress and noticing when things are starting to feel unsafe, either for me or for the person that I am attempting to communicate with. And certainly safe dialogue, when we're under stress, we're really trying to counteract some physical and emotional patterns that we can observe. So we'll talk about that. You know, what are some things that each of us can do? If you can walk away today with one thing to manage your own stress and manage that difficult conversation and create a sense of safety and real communication, high quality communication, then our time will have been well worth it. And part of that is really no surprise. I work as a leadership coach. I work as a mediator, so I get to observe a lot of people who are struggling in conflict, who are feeling not safe with each other sometimes. And the thing that usually goes out the window is our listening. So we're getting ready to say the next thing on our minds, but we often are not really focused on paying attention to what the other person is sharing with us. So as a leadership coach and as a mediator, one of the things that I realize is that all of us need to practice effective listening skills in order to manage conversations better. And if there's one thing that leaders do in terms of a competency, in terms of a skill, a trait, it's they do a good job of listening to others. So we'll talk about listening skills that you can practice. No matter how good I think I am, no matter how proficient or skilled, I can always get better. I always have blind spots. And a big part of effective communication is knowing what do I need to practice. So if you walk away today with one thing you can practice, just sort of have a little red flag that goes off and says, I can get better at this thing, and I can do so and try to focus on that improvement in my practice in those tough conversations. So when we talk about difficult conversations, we can if we're behavioral scientists, if we look around, we can say, okay, there's some things that we're observing that we see that are in common with difficult encounters. And some people have a hard time with silence. Others have a hard time with passive aggressive behavior. What I always try to think about is what's underneath the behavior, and why am I struggling? Why am I having a hard time with this person in particular? So often we're thinking about the other person, but we know that if I am struggling in a relationship or in my communications, sometimes it's about a window to my own soul. Maybe this person reminds me of someone else in my life that I had difficulty with, or that it was a stressful situation. So if you think of conflict as not something to be avoided necessarily, but something that we can actually learn from. To the extent that I am struggling with this person, that's about me, and it can be an opportunity for me to grow, to feel more comfortable, more confident, more competent in terms of my own personal growth in dealing with that person that I find challenging, maybe on my work team, or maybe in our home families. We see these difficult conversations can happen both in the workplace and in our family relationships or with our friends. We see a lot of people who are struggling with difficult interactions. So isn't it great? We all have an opportunity for personal growth, especially with the stress of COVID-19. We're all being challenged in ways that we might not have expected before all this happened. So we can change some of the destructive, some of the frustrating patterns and the ways that we interact. I can get better at how I respond to someone that I struggle with. So they may never change their behavior, but I can change my own thinking. I can change my own, I can get better at managing the stress and my own emotional responses and feel more confident the next time. So I would encourage you to just think about that. What conversations do you find to be difficult? And how do those people behave? Are they really aggressive and controlling and loud? Or are they sort of unresponsive and withdrawing and silent? What do you find to be that difficult person or difficult situation? And how do you respond? And what's worked for you? If I think about my strengths in relationships and in communications, I can build on those, so I can get better and do more of what works and try to do less of what's not working or what is frustrating. So really that's the goal today, is what can I do in the middle of being upset, or in the middle of feeling frustrated and like I just want to bail. How can I communicate more effectively and manage the situation? So this slide is really looking at the challenges, especially with COVID-19, the changes that's brought to our caregiving, our concern about our health, to working from home, to suddenly being parents and grandparents that are teachers at the same time, not having childcare, or the kids not going to school. It seems like everything has changed. So the more stress and change in a short period of time, the more we go into fight or flight. The natural, normal reactions that we have. My blood pressure increases, my heart rate increases, I might have more difficulty sleeping or eating. I might have a hard time putting two thoughts together, never mind trying to communicate with someone else in a difficult, pressure-filled situation. So the barrier, the challenge is stress. and sort of all the things going faster and faster. If you think about a stressful or a difficult conversation, a lot of times it starts out kind of slow. One person will say one thing, and then there'll be some airtime, and then someone will say something in response. And then as our emotions start to get set off, our natural fight or flight response, maybe I feel threatened, maybe I feel attacked, maybe I don't feel accepted or listened to. Pretty soon, I go into this pace that's getting faster and faster. It kind of goes. So there's a difficult conversation, but if the pace is getting faster and faster, so it kind of points to the goal, which is slowing down communication so that we're increasing the quality. So pace, faster and faster, not only in life, but in actually our communications, is a real challenge or a real barrier. Sometimes we get overwhelmed with too much communication. Some of us are extroverts, some of us are introverts, and so just our own styles and how we respond to different kinds of communication or the frequency can be a barrier. Direct versus indirect. Instead of talking to the person that I have a hard time with or that I struggle with in a difficult conversation, I'm talking to somebody else in my team rather than them directly, or someone else is doing that in response to me. And then we get all kinds of complex, difficult gossip in the workplace. We get not sending the mail to the right address, but talking to somebody else that we feel more comfortable with. And we start out with a difficult relationship, a difficult conversation, and the next thing you know, we have a team problem, or we have a schism, a fragmented work family. So sometimes we find it's easier to be indirect when direct really would be the healthiest communication in a difficult situation. Or sometimes we shut down. We don't have a balance on our team. One person is dominating the airtime. And as I mentioned, it might be helpful to think about differences in personalities or styles in communication. Some people just don't want to deal with conflict. They want to avoid it and as long as possible. And sometimes that works for a while, but then conflict bubbles to the surface when we least expect it. And as I mentioned, if we're doing this, things are going faster and faster, they're not feeling safe. You can probably bet the one thing that's not happening is nobody's listening. So very little communication is actually happening. So again, I think I said at the beginning that it's helpful for me to think about what's motivating this person. What's the purpose behind it? People just don't behave for no reason. They are trying to get their needs met. There's something that they're trying to achieve. Maybe it's feeling, again, accepted or feeling understood, or they're trying to control others in unhealthy, destructive ways. So sometimes I try to think about little boys and little girls when I'm observing childlike behavior from adults in communications. It's like, what are we trying to do? What are they trying to do? What need are they trying to meet by acting this way? And that can be helpful to get some perspective and some awareness about a better way of responding to them. So how can I help them get what they need while taking care of myself in the process? But that, behavior and what we say and what we do is a choice. And it's about awareness and being conscious. We are all responsible for our behavior and our communications, but we're usually trying to get something. We're wanting to feel better, or we're trying to respond to difficulty and heal and deal with pain. Sometimes my past trauma with someone else is being transferred to this other person and I'm not even aware of it. It's like, oh, they remind me of what I struggled with my brother or my dad or the coworker that I didn't get along with 10 years ago. So that can, again, just being aware of patterns and getting perspective can be useful. So what do we do? Well, kind of assess the situation by asking ourselves some of these questions. And sometimes, you know, the other person's not going to change, even if we ask them to. But we can get some distance and perspective and awareness, and then decide we're going to do even small incremental steps, baby steps towards coping better. So next time I'm going to try this. Here's a technique that works. I'm going to take more time to slow the conversation down. I'm going to focus on listening. I'm going to maybe take a break when we need to. I'm going to do this, have this conversation in a confidential place rather than out in the hallway. So we lower the stress level. I'm going to take the time to communicate when we often will avoid it. All parts of creating a coping plan or the conditions for more effective communication. And then we can kind of monitor how we're doing and modify as we go. So again, looking at our perceptions, our viewpoints, and realizing sometimes we get stories going about other people. So sometimes I need to challenge my assumptions, my stories, and to get to reality and realize that our own filters, our own perceptions can get in the way of seeing clearly, and challenging our realities can be part of gaining that perspective and creating the change in how we're feeling when we're around that person. So here's the famous quote from Stephen Covey, kind of a leadership guru. But if you think about it, it really makes sense. Listen first to understand, and then to be understood. So if I take the time to really pay attention and to listen well, and it doesn't mean agreement. I may never agree with you, but I can understand you, or at least understand what it is that you're attempting to communicate and let you know that I've heard you. Then you're this much more likely. There's a reciprocity, a back and forth. You're this much more likely to take the time to listen to me if I do that well. It's not easy. It's hard, especially when we're upset. We just want to go away or shut it down or take care of ourselves. So effective listening, especially in stressful situations, in traumatic situations like COVID-19, is even more difficult than usual. So this is hard work, but it does work in terms of diffusing, creating safety, slowing things down, and really making sure that we're communicating well. So it really is an art. It's about it's a skill that we can get better and better at. And sometimes people are so focused on their own opinion or their own thoughts that they're not listening at all. So again, you know, why do we listen? Again, if you think about what motivates people, what are they trying to achieve when they're trying to get their opinion heard, when they want to be heard or they want to be understood, they want to feel a sense of appreciation. I just think if you think about a team at work or your team at home, it's like everybody's trying to get their needs met. They're trying to fill their buckets. They want to feel important. They want to feel like they matter. They want to be appreciated. And if we're all trying to meet those needs, that's just a good thing to think about when, again, you're trying to understand and get better at communications. So paying attention to those, you know, those issues around self-esteem, especially in negative situations. I can be a very effective trainer and I can communicate well if I'm not under stress, but I'm a human being, and there are times when my own self-esteem in negative situations gets threatened. And that's when my style under stress can be destructive or not so effective. So all of us are having those human reactions and those times when our self-esteem feels threatened in negative situations. So some things you can do, talking about the behavior or the facts of the situation versus labeling the person. A lot of times we fall into blaming and fault finding versus separating out the behavior or the facts from the person. And you know, my wife did not make me mad this morning. Maybe she did the same thing today that she did yesterday, but I tripped over the dog and the car wouldn't start, and I didn't get enough sleep. She doesn't make me feel anything. So one way of separating the two things out, you know, who's responsible for my feelings is owning my own feelings through I statements. So being clear about the issue or behavior versus the person and blaming the other person for what it is that I'm feeling. So some other ideas, some other ways of managing difficult conversations. First of all, just taking the time. An example might be, you know, right now you and I we missed the project deadline and we're both upset. And so maybe we should take some time to cool off and let's set up a time. What would work for you tomorrow at 2 o'clock so we can get some perspective and come back and have a constructive conversation. But a lot of times we don't take the time, we just avoid it, or we forget about the need to manage our issues. And as we talked about with this effective listening, some of these are like kindergarten skills, aren't they? One at a time, take turns. You'll each get your chance. Let's slow the conversation down so that we can have a higher quality conversation and we can get really accurate in how we're each feeling and what we want to accomplish and where we want to go with this. So this thing called active listening or reflective listening, probably the most crucial skill that counselors use. Effective customer service people use it. Think of an airline employee at the airport and everyone found out their flight's just been rebooked and they're all upset in a confined space. They often will take it out on the employee. And so you see people that become very effective in reflecting back what they're hearing without necessarily being able to change anything that's happening. So reflective listening is about, this is what I'm hearing you say, and this is what I'm imagining you feel. It's about letting the person know that you understand what's going on for them, really being attentive and slowing things down. And then again, they're this much more likely to listen to you and to give you the same courtesy, to reciprocate likewise. So being aware of, again, my own personal baggage or what I find particularly struggle with. The person that I am most challenged by is a learning opportunity about me. So what is it about this person or this situation with them that I am really struggling with? And what is that about? Is it about something from my past? Is it about my own insecurity? How can I take care of myself and get better at managing that conversation? And the last one, taking time out, slowing things down, taking a break when things are starting to not feel safe. So again, active listening is about not just the words, but it's about my eye contact. It's about my body language. It's about owning my own feelings through I statements, kind of paraphrasing, summarizing back what it is that you understand as a way of respecting the other person and slowing the conversation down and getting it right. So it's about, tell me more. That's a great thing to say, to let the person know you really are focused on listening. You really do care about what they're saying. So that's interesting. Tell me more, or I don't quite understand, is a great way of inviting the person and also making a statement yourself that you're really there. You're really present. You're really engaged in communications. It lets the person know that you're respecting them, that you are working at understanding to the best of your ability. So I do have a video on active listening. Johanna, can you let me know if you can hear that?
Think about how much information you get every day from listening.
I can hear it, but it's really quiet. You might need to increase your volume.
With you often.
Okay.
So will your family and friends. How much of what all
I'll tell you what, I think what I'm going to do is play that towards the end. I'm going to focus on one other thing here, and then I'll try playing it from a different place. And I can send a link to everyone. We can send the link out as well, so you can look at. It's a very brief video about active listening, but we can see if we can make that work in a few minutes. I wanted
and
to.
Tom, if you want to share the link with me, I can also post it to the webinar so that people can access it before they log off.
That sounds great. We'll give it a shot at the end, maybe during.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do have a book. I'm not getting any royalties, and there's a whole training that you can go through on crucial conversations. But this chart up on the slide, as well as I think hopefully you can see the book, Crucial Conversations, is a great resource for folks who are wanting to get better at their communications. And this little chart you can see, or this little image you can see, is a good summary of what happens, that we're shooting to have effective dialogue in the middle. We're trying to come to a sense of shared understanding or meaning and safety in the middle, versus what normally happens is we often withdraw and we avoid, we mask through, passive aggressive behaviors and sort of some make-believe behaviors instead of being honest sometimes, because it's difficult. So we either sometimes fall into silence up top, we shut down, or we can get into controlling and attacking when we don't feel safe, or when we're trying to just control other people and their behavior. So we're shooting for the middle, and these chapters in this book are about kind of challenging our stories that we get. We sometimes make assumptions about other people's behaviors, or we imagine things that just aren't true, that's motivating them. So it's really about challenging our own perceptions and also noticing when things are not feeling safe. So just a real quick summary, these are some of the chapters in the book. They're also cues or clues about things to focus on. Staying focused on what I really want versus getting distracted. Noticing when things are getting unsafe, blood pressure's increasing, the parts of my brain that are focused on listening effectively are being drained of blood, literally at the very time that I need them during a difficult conversation. So you can see actually the physical manifestations in the person that you're talking to. Sometimes it can be an idea of, we need to do something different here because things are not feeling safe for either them or for me. And how can we do that? Do we need to take a time out? Do we need to change the issue and then come back? Do we need to challenge our stories about each other? Excuse me. We need to focus on how can I be persuasive without being abrasive. So there's a difference between assertiveness and getting better. Maybe that's the area that I need to focus on, is feeling more confident and competent and assertive in my relationships and in my conversations versus falling into aggression and destructive behaviors that don't work as well. And again, what I kind of mentioned earlier, asking questions, being curious, inviting more communication, especially when it's difficult. That's a hard thing to do, but it really works. And then finally, hopefully getting to a plan about what we can do differently, what we're going to do in the future to manage the situation the best that we can. So Crucial Conversations, great book to help work teams. And I would encourage you to think about, what one thing struck you today that might be useful in your most difficult conversations. Is it active listening? If you Google active listening, you'll come up with all kinds of resources, including the video that we can share. And tips about becoming better at listening, or better at being assertive, or better at planning for the most difficult conversations at work or at home. But it's, again, about baby steps. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it also, of course, is so much about me taking care of myself. If I haven't taken care of myself very well lately, and I'm not getting enough sleep, and I'm struggling emotionally, or I have some family issues, that just adds to the barriers to effective communication and difficult conversations. So please remember that the Employee Assistance Program benefit is there for you, especially during this difficult time. For you, for your family, for managers and learning how to become better. I can model the way by using the EAP and then letting others on my work team know that the same resource is available to them, 24-hour by phone, face-to-face, or coaching appointments. It's not just mental health issues, as you certainly know right now. It's about legal concerns. It's about financial concerns. With COVID-19, it's about caregiving concerns. So use the EAP. It's a sign of strength. It's a sign of being smart enough to take care of yourself when you know you might benefit. It's a sign of sanity. It's about self-care and wellness. And so certainly the folks at the Employee Assistance Program are there to help when life happens. So also the EFR website. Let's see if I can play that video if you can hear it better. If not, we'll get the link to everyone, and we'll also open it up to questions.
While we're waiting for Tom to get the video queued up, if you have a question, use the raise your hand function, and I will see those come in, and I will ask Tom your questions. Tom, if you want to email me the link to the video, I can include it in the chat, and then anyone on the webinar who would like to access it can pull it off of that.
Okay, that sounds great. So I guess we're ready for questions.
All right, well, we already have the first one. Can you please show page 19 again, the EFR diagram I would like to share with my staff? I think that was this particular, yeah, there we go.
There we go.
In one of the slides, it mentioned maintaining eye contact and reading body language. Do you have any tips for when difficult conversations are happening solely via phone call?
Oh, interesting. Obviously, when you're on a phone call, the number of the things that you can observe is much more limited. So one of the things there is if at all possible, face to face. But when you're on a phone call, then it's about when in doubt, check it out. So asking people to repeat if you don't understand, making sure your understanding was what they intended. So I'm not quite sure if I heard you correctly. Is this what you meant to say? So doing check-ins and being more attentive to voice tone, to volume. You know, you seem like you're starting to yell, and I'm not sure if that's what you're intending to do, but let's see if we can take a deep breath. I didn't mention that today, but breathing is so important, especially on the phone. I was the director of a crisis line for several years, and we trained volunteers to deal with difficult conversations on the phone, obviously suicide situations and drug overdose. And so part of it was just paying attention to my own breathing and using reflective listening even more aggressively, if you will, to make sure I was getting it right, because the voice or the video in these days was all I had. So just, I guess, double checking is the best that we can do.
Thanks, Tom. Our next question is, how do we effectively communicate with someone who feels using effective communication as a form of manipulation and shuts down?
Okay, someone just shuts down. How do we do?
It says, how do we effectively communicate with someone who feels using effective communication as a form of manipulation and therefore shuts down?
Oh, I guess keep trying, inviting them to communicate in any way that they can. It can be very frustrating when someone just goes silent. So part of it for me sometimes is allowing the silence to be what it is, and waiting long enough for them to jump in. Sometimes I'm too quick to want to communicate and get it right, and to be a caretaker, instead of just being comfortable with silence. So that might be part of it. It's just, yeah, my own comfort level with silence. And then at some point, people are communicating, it's maybe being aware of balancing communication and early on, maybe setting a specific time in the future to have a conversation if they've shut down now. Those are all things that I can think of.
Thanks, Tom. Our next question is, what to do when you are blindsided with an accusation or a previous conversation that went poorly?
Well, being blindsided, it's like I'm into fight or flight, recognizing that maybe now is not the time to have the conversation. You know, I'm concerned that you're saying that about me. I don't think it's true, but I also am upset myself now. So when can we talk about this? We do need to talk about it because I don't feel like you treated me fairly. So what would be a good time to have a conversation? So having a conversation, you can hear that theme in a lot of my responses. Having a conversation about having a conversation is part of a strategy or an approach that can be useful in diffusing what's happening right now, but setting a time that we just don't avoid it altogether.
All right, and we are we have one more question here. How do you handle someone who comes across as abrasive before you can even get your question or statement out and you are trying to be respectful?
Be aware of your own stress reactions, taking deep breaths, owning your feelings about how you experience what they said without doing likewise. I am feeling attacked. I don't know if that's your intention, but I feel like right now I'm upset because I don't feel like you're treating me fairly, or I experienced what you said as being really unfair and abrasive. So if you can hear the subtleness of owning it versus retaliating likewise, that's just an awareness I can get better at, and trying to read the book to slow the conversations down. So especially when the stakes are high and I feel attacked, that's when it's most difficult. You want me to listen? I want to do the opposite, really. I want to get out of there, or I want to retaliate likewise. So being aware of the first tendency to try to retaliate or reciprocate in destructive ways, and try to separate out what I'm feeling. Am I feeling attacked versus it's your fault? Easy to say, hard to do.
We've actually had a couple more questions roll in, and we do have until 10:45, so I'm going to go for it. How do you deal with the silence when the other person is not ready to communicate?
Maybe state what you observed. Tom, you seemed like you've shut down, and I don't know what's going on with you because you're being silent. And I would like to communicate about this. When you're ready, can you let me know when we can talk about this? So stating what your own experience is or what you're observing, and then inviting them, asking them to respond at a time or a place that they feel ready or more comfortable. Or let me know, I'm struggling with your silence. I don't know what to do. Can you let me know how I can get to a better place with this?
Thank you. And our last question, with regard to using conflict as an opportunity to identify your personal shortcomings, how can we effectively process that information into a conversation currently taking place?
Kind of owning when you're aware of getting something touching off your own personal work and verbalizing it. I'm suggesting you do that at the very time that you feel most frightened or fearful about doing so. So it's getting better at owning your own reactions and verbalizing them without necessarily blaming the other person. Again, easier said than done. All this stuff is so easy to talk about, but it's a matter of being aware of when your own personal work is getting touched off. Sometimes that can really help the other person to not do that next time. Not always, but sometimes it can help create. If you think of the struggles equaling learning, you can learn to get better at sharing it. Hopefully they can learn to get better at not touching it off.
All right. Well, thank you. Hey, Tom, if you want to email me the link to that video quickly, I can get that posted. Also, someone just asked, where can we find the book that Tom mentioned in his presentation? And it was, could you just remind the listeners of what that?
Yeah, it's if you just put Crucial Conversations into Google, you should get lots of different clicks. But Crucial Conversations, authors Patterson, Grenny, McMillan, and Switzler. So Crucial Conversations, tools for talking when stakes are high. There's a whole series. There's some leadership coaches that have their entire practice built around Crucial Conversations training. So this is something that I use a lot in mediations. So often people are struggling in their communications, and I'll encourage them to both buy the book as part of their agreements, and then to practice some of the skills, one skill per week, or also teams can all purchase the book together and then have brief discussion times where they share what they got out of this week's chapter. So shared learning, shared training experiences is part of getting better at this individually as well as for work teams, and in particular for those that struggle in communications.
Thanks, Tom. Well, while you're sending me that email, I will just speak for a moment about, I guess, the importance of remembering your EAP benefit when you are struggling with communication, whether it's personally or professionally. So many of the things that cause stress in life kind of come back to communication and how effectively we are able to communicate. So please don't forget about the EAP benefits, even if you need to call our 800 number just to say, hey, is this something I would possibly turn to my EAP for? We are here to help you, just explore your benefits and explore the different resources that we have available. And then for workplaces, we offer trainings. And so certainly things have changed and we're not doing trainings in person right now, but we do have the ability to deliver remote trainings. And so if you are in a workplace and you think that you would like to have a presenter with expertise in communication or leadership or wellness come into your workplace, please don't forget that we can do that and we can accommodate with remote trainings during this time. Just a heads up, we will not be having a webinar next Wednesday, but we will resume with webinars on June 10th and June 24th. So there will be information on our website about those shortly. So please stay tuned for that. We are going to be moving into some different areas of emotional well-being as we enter a new month and new time period with the COVID situation. We know that a lot of people are starting to make the slow transition back to the workplace, and so we are going to be mindful of that as we develop our topics for our June webinars. Go potty. Go potty. Shh, okay, hey, Audrey.
Well, thank you so much, Johanna.
Yeah, have you sent that email over to me, Tom? I haven't gotten it yet.
I'll need to leave the meeting to do that, so I'll send it to you as soon as we
Thanks,
leave.
Tom.
Okay? All right,
Thanks,
thanks so
Tom.
much. Goodbye, everyone.